Few people are ready to hear this, but most live weak lives not because of a lack of ability, but because of excessive conditioning. From an early age, you were taught to confuse kindness with submission, patience with eternal waiting, and calmness with passivity. And while you were trying to do everything right, others learned something far more dangerous: how the game really works. Machiavelli already said centuries ago that politics guided by reality, not by ideals, is the only path for those who want to stop being a pawn and become a player. The problem is that almost no one has the courage to abandon the comfortable illusions that sustain their own weakness. Perhaps you've already experienced this firsthand. You work hard, you strive, you respect the rules, and yet you're ignored, surpassed, tested. It's not bad luck. It's not a lack of talent. It's social perception. The world reacts to the image you project, not the story you tell about yourself. Better to be feared than loved was never about intimidation. It was always about consequences. The end justifies the means when the means are clarity. Those who avoid being hated at all costs pay with invisibility. Those who live seeking approval relinquish power without realizing it. And this happens every day, silently. In this video, he will show how weakness is built, how attachment keeps you controllable, and why true power is born when you stop reacting and start choosing. Virtù and fortuna do not favor those who wait. They favor those who understand. If you feel there is something in you that has never been fully used, something that has been silenced, tamed, or postponed, then perhaps this video will not be comfortable, but it will be necessary. If something inside you awakened while listening, don't ignore that feeling. This channel isn't about videos, it's about memories. Remember who you were before the fear, before the exhaustion, before the silence. Each new video here is a different reflection of your own soul, an invitation to understand what the world never taught you. The power you seek outside has always been within you. If you feel that this journey speaks to what lives silently within you, sign up now. Not to follow yet another creator, but to reconnect with something the world tried to make you forget. Because here, every word was made to heal, each reflection to awaken, and each video serves as a reminder. You are not alone on the path back to yourself. Click on subscribe and turn the algorithm into a daily reminder of who you really are. He begins by reminding us of something almost no one questions. Weakness is not innate, it is implanted. From an early age, politics guided by reality, not ideals, operates behind the scenes of emotional education, teaching meekness as the supreme virtue. The child learns that obeying is being good, that disagreeing is being a problem, that silence is maturity. It seems harmless, but it is not. Machiavelli already warned that power prefers predictable subjects, not conscious individuals. The end justifies the means when the objective is social control, and the programming begins with gentle phrases, emotional rewards, and subtle punishments. One grows up believing that avoiding conflict is wisdom, when often it is merely trained fear. The appearance of virtue becomes currency, smiling, yielding, swallowing. Virtù and fortuna are far from those who have been trained to ask permission. And so, without realizing it, decisions based on real human nature are replaced by automatic reflexes. He observes that at this point weakness no longer seems like weakness, it seems like character, and that is precisely where the system wins. He goes on to explain that social control works best when no one realizes they are being controlled. Meekness becomes public praise, while firmness is labeled as arrogance. Is it better to be feared than loved? They taught the opposite because people who seek love accept crumbs. Avoiding being hated becomes an absolute rule, even when it requires giving up boundaries. The calculated use of force is demonized, while passivity is romanticized. At home, at school, at work, the same script is repeated. Don't make noise, don't confront, be understanding. But he gives a simple, everyday example. How many times does someone accept an unfair task at work just to avoid seeming difficult? That's not kindness, it's conditioning. Your own loyal armies begin in your mind, but whoever has never learned to say no doesn't even lead themselves. Constant adaptability is confused with continuous submission, and when they realize it, the person is already reacting more than acting, asking more than deciding, expecting more than building. Weakness has been successfully installed. He then provokes, observe how this emotional programming spans generations. Well-intentioned parents repeat what they learned. Teachers reinforce it. The culture applauds it. No one wakes up weak. They wake up trained. Machiavelli understood that decisions based on real human nature require looking at it without guilt or romanticization. Guilt, incidentally, is one of the most efficient leashes ever created. The individual grows up thinking that feeling anger is wrong, that wanting more is ugly, that setting limits is selfishness. And so, politics guided by reality, not by ideals, continues to operate with silent perfection. He suggests something practical. Start noticing throughout the day how many decisions are made to please and how many are made out of conviction. It's uncomfortable, but revealing. It's not about becoming aggressive, but about reclaiming the right to choose. The end justifies the means when the means are conscience. Virtù and fortuna only appear when someone realizes they have been molded and decides to unmold themselves. And it is precisely at this point that the inevitable question arises. If the weakness was constructed, what happens when someone decides to deconstruct it? He takes a step forward and makes clear something that often wounds the ego. Weakness is not respected, it is hunted. Machiavelli never romanticized the human condition because he observed the world as it is, not as he wished it to be. Politics guided by reality, not by ideals, starts from the principle that people react to signals, not intentions. You can be well-intentioned, ethical, and correct, but if you project fragility, the world responds with pressure. It's hard to admit, but it's liberating to understand. Better to be feared than loved doesn't mean inspiring terror, but rather transmitting consequences. Those who don't generate consequences become disposable options. The end justifies the means when the means are strategic clarity. He explains that power is never announced. It reveals itself in how others adjust their behavior in your presence. If people frequently test your limits, something is being communicated without words. Virtù and fortuna favor those who understand this game early on. He elaborates, saying that the world doesn't treat you based on your feelings, but on the image you project. An appearance of virtue, when not accompanied by inner strength, becomes an invitation to exploitation. Avoiding being hated at all costs often generates something worse: silent contempt. A simple example helps to illustrate this. Think of someone who always accepts last-minute changes, vague excuses, and broken promises. Initially, they receive praise for their flexibility. Over time, they become the first to be overburdened and the last to be respected. It's not bad luck, it's social perception. The calculated use of force here comes in as a posture, not as aggression. Sometimes strength is saying, "This doesn't work for me," and then remaining silent. Your own loyal armies begin when you stop outsourcing your emotional authority. Decisions based on real human nature require understanding that respect is born from limits, not from excessive explanations. He observes that Machiavelli spoke to rulers, but taught attentive individuals. Constant adaptability is not about changing principles, but about adjusting strategy according to the terrain. In some environments, gentleness works. In others, firmness is survival. The common mistake is always wearing the same mask, expecting different results. Better to be feared than loved, in this context, means being predictable only in consistency, never in submission. He suggests something practical. Observe who, upon entering a room, makes others change their tone of voice or the pace of the conversation. This is the silent sign of power. Not because they shout, but because they don't need to. Politics guided by reality, not by ideals, teaches that those who project internal security rarely need to justify themselves. The end justifies the means when the means are presence. Virtù and fortuna begin to align when someone understands that power is not something that is asked for. It is something that is communicated. And from there, the next trap arises. The comfortable lies that keep so many people imprisoned. He now enters delicate territory because here reside the beliefs that make weakness seem like virtue. The first is the lie of moral superiority, the idea that goodness in itself leads to the top. Machiavelli never said that being cruel was mandatory, but he made it clear that naivete is costly. Politics guided by reality, not by ideals, shows that the world rewards those who understand the rules, not those who pretend they don't exist. The end justifies the means when the means are lucidity. People who are too good often confuse character with an inability to act. Better to be feared than loved reappears here as an antidote. Respect precedes affection. He observes that many are good not by choice, but out of fear of being rejected. The appearance of virtue becomes an emotional shield, but it also becomes a prison. Virtù and fortuna do not accompany those who abdicate their own power, thinking that this is nobility. The second and third lies go hand in hand, the lie of time and the lie of equality. They say you just have to wait, that everything will work itself out, that everyone has the same chances. He almost smiles when he talks about it. Patience, when it becomes passivity, is a slow death. Decisions based on real human nature show that there are dominators and dominated, leaders and followers, players and pawns. Pretending to be absolutely equal only benefits those who have already understood the invisible hierarchy. A practical example: two people enter the same market with the same salary. One learns to negotiate, observe, and position themselves. The other expects automatic recognition. Years later, the results are opposite. It's not luck, it's strategy. Your own loyal armies are not built by waiting for permission. Constant adaptability requires perceiving when waiting is prudence, and when it is disguised cowardice. The last two lies close the circle, the lie of stability and the lie of guilt. Comfort slowly kills ambition, and guilt acts as a social leash. Avoiding being hated becomes an excuse to never confront anything. He explains that systems love guilty people because guilty people explain themselves too much. The calculated use of force is replaced by endless justifications. The appearance of virtue becomes a public spectacle, while real power remains far away. He suggests a simple exercise. Whenever you feel guilty for imposing a limit, ask yourself who benefits from that feeling. Most of the time, it's not you. Machiavelli understood that politics guided by reality, not by ideals, begins when someone abandons these comfortable lies. The end justifies the means when the means is inner freedom. And when these illusions begin to crumble, an inevitable need arises to exchange emotional reaction for conscious strategy. He pauses almost didactically before moving on, because this is where the real turning point occurs. Stopping the reaction and starting to calculate isn't coldness, it's strategic maturity. Machiavelli observed that decisions based on real human nature rarely arise in the heat of the moment. Emotion is a potent fuel, but a terrible flywheel. Politics guided by reality, not ideals, teaches that those who react hand over control to those who provoke. The end justifies the means when the means are self-control. He explains that every immediate reaction reveals a mappable weakness. Those who are easily irritated are predictable. Those who are quickly offended are manipulable. Better to be feared than loved reappears as an internal stance, not to be swept away by every stimulus. The calculated use of force begins in the silence that precedes the response. Virtù and fortuna favor those who choose when and how to act, not those who explode impulsively. He elaborates, saying that detaching oneself from outcomes is one of the most counterintuitive skills of power. When someone desperately needs a result, they lose room for maneuver. Avoiding being hated at this stage gives way to something more sophisticated, not needing approval. He gives a practical and simple example. Imagine a negotiation, a difficult conversation, or even a relationship. Whoever enters with the fear of losing is already at a disadvantage. Your own loyal armies are built when you know you can leave the table without despair. Emotion here is not denied. It is used as an instrument. Anger becomes alert. Fear becomes risk assessment. Enthusiasm becomes contained energy. Constant adaptability is learning to feel everything without being governed by anything. The appearance of virtue ceases to be a performance and becomes a conscious choice. He then talks about building a cold but not empty inner core. Cold in the sense of stable, not insensitive. Machiavelli never advocated the absence of emotion, but rather its mastery. Politics guided by reality, not by ideals, demands this solid foundation, because the world tests those who waver too much. The end justifies the means when the means are internal coherence. He suggests a practical exercise. Before responding to any provocation, wait a few seconds and ask yourself, what is the strategic advantage of speaking now? Sometimes the answer is none. Better to be feared than loved, at this point, means being respected for emotional predictability. Virtù and fortuna begin to align when a person stops over-explaining and starts observing more. And when emotion ceases to command, something curious happens. Attachments begin to seem like unnecessary burdens. He enters this point with a simple, almost uncomfortable phrase: attachment is weakness, not in a moral sense, but a strategic one. Machiavelli understood that whoever needs too much has already lost half the battle. Politics guided by reality, not by ideals, shows that real power belongs to those who can let go. The end justifies the means when the means is emotional independence. Attachment to people, labels, positions, or even old versions of oneself creates obvious pressure points. Better to be feared than loved reappears here as autonomy, not depending on the presence, praise, or validation of anyone. He observes that many call loyalty what, in practice, is fear of being alone. Virtù and fortuna rarely accompany those who cannot let go. He explains that detachment is not abandonment, it's a conscious choice. Avoiding being hated at this stage ceases to be a priority because pleasing others is no longer a need. An everyday example helps to clarify this. Think of someone who tolerates disrespect in order not to lose a group, a relationship, or an opportunity. This person believes they are gaining something, but they are only postponing the loss of their own authority. Self-contained and loyal armies begin when a person becomes self-sufficient. The calculated use of force here can simply be withdrawing access. Silence, distance, and absence communicate more than long speeches. Decisions based on real human nature show that those who need nothing become difficult to manipulate. Constant adaptability is not about molding oneself to others, it's about knowing when to step away. He emphasizes that detaching oneself from identity is as important as detaching oneself from people. Many remain trapped by the image of being good, strong, necessary, indispensable. The appearance of virtue becomes a prison when a person feels they cannot disappoint anyone. Machiavelli spoke of external power, but pointed to an internal liberation. The end justifies the means, when the means is the freedom to be who you are without asking permission. He suggests something practical, gradually reducing excessive explanations, automatic apologies, and the search for approval. Small tests reveal a lot. Better to be feared than loved, at this point, means being respected for the absence of dependence. Virtù and fortuna begin to smile when the individual realizes that those who need nothing cannot be dominated. And when attachment falls, true transformation begins to take shape. He makes it clear that transformation is not a spectacle, but a silent substitution. Replacing guilt with clarity is the first real movement of power. Politics guided by reality, not by ideals, shows that guilt confuses, while clarity guides. Machiavelli knew that guilty people over-explain, over-ask, and give in even before the confrontation exists. The end justifies the means when the means is cold lucidity. Here it is better to be feared than loved to appear as a natural consequence. Those who act with clarity do not need to beg for understanding. He observes that guilt often comes disguised as a heavy conscience, but it is almost always just fear of disappointing. Virtù and fortuna converge when someone begins to decide without apologizing for existing. Decisions based on real human nature are born when a person understands that not all discomfort is a mistake. Next, he talks about replacing fear with calm, not with performative courage. Calm is the true luxury of power. The calculated use of force begins when someone doesn't need to prove anything. He explains that fear accelerates, betrays, and denounces intentions. Calm, on the other hand, slows down the entire environment. A simple example helps to visualize this. In an argument, whoever raises their voice has usually already lost control. Whoever keeps their tone low forces the other to adjust. Avoiding being hated ceases to be a priority because calm doesn't seek applause. Your own loyal armies are formed when the mind doesn't panic at every external pressure. Constant adaptability isn't about reacting quickly, it's about knowing when not to react. Machiavelli understood that strategic serenity intimidates more than any explicit threat. Finally, he talks about replacing attachment with silence. Silence not as absence, but as precision. The appearance of virtue loses value when a person understands that not everything needs to be said, explained, or defended. The end justifies the means when the means are an economy of energy. He suggests something practical. Before justifying yourself, ask if someone really asked for an explanation or if it's just a habit. Often, silence resolves what words would only complicate. Better to be feared than loved here means being respected through restraint. Virtù and fortuna begin to operate when every word has weight. Decisions based on real human nature show that those who speak less observe more. And when this transformation happens, a different figure emerges in the game, someone who impresses not with noise, but with presence. He clarifies that the dangerous man is not the noisy one, but the sufficient one. Machiavelli observed that those who shout need to convince, those who don't need to simply act. Politics, guided by reality, not by ideals, shows that the true threat doesn't announce intentions. The end justifies the means when the means is autonomy. Better to be feared than loved here has nothing to do with aggressiveness, but with silent consequences. People perceive even without being able to explain it when someone doesn't depend on them. The appearance of virtue loses value in the face of a solid presence. Virtù and fortuna tend to favor those who act without seeking validation. He comments that the dangerous man doesn't compete for attention, he naturally displaces it. And when someone doesn't need to prove anything, the entire environment adjusts. He elaborates, saying that calm presence with authority is a rare trait. Authority doesn't come from position, it comes from self-control. The calculated use of force begins when a person doesn't react to minor provocations. A practical example helps to illustrate this. In a meeting, while everyone competes to speak, there is one person who listens, intervenes little, and when they speak, ends the discussion. It's not theatrical charisma, it's precision. Avoiding being hated ceases to be a concern because the focus becomes effectiveness. Loyal armies form around those who transmit security, not anxiety. Decisions based on real human nature show that people follow those who seem to know where they are going, even in silence. Constant adaptability here means knowing when to advance and when to simply observe. He concludes this point by reinforcing that the dangerous man operates above emotion, not against it. He feels, but he is not a hostage to it. He moves silently and strategically, choosing battles like one chooses investments, with calculation, not impulse. The end justifies the means when the means are internal coherence. Better to be feared than loved, at this stage, means being respected for the predictability of one's own posture. Virtù and fortuna align when each action is minimal and efficient. He suggests something practical: reduce visible reactions, avoid explaining plans before executing them, and observe how the behavior of others changes. Little by little, presence speaks louder than any discourse. And it is precisely when someone becomes like this that the next question arises: how to recognize, internally, the signs that this awakening has already begun. He explains that when awakening occurs, certain behaviors simply fall away. The person doesn't beg, doesn't explain, doesn't negotiate their own dignity. Machiavelli would say that this is politics guided by reality, not by ideals, in its most silent form. The end justifies the means when the means is self-respect. Better to be feared than loved here is not a conscious choice, it's a natural consequence. Those who don't beg convey an internal scarcity of concessions. The appearance of virtue ceases to be displayed because there is no longer an internal audience to convince. Virtù and fortuna begin to operate when a person realizes that speaking less is not losing voice, but gaining weight. Decisions based on real human nature show that those who over-explain themselves give away an advantage without realizing it. He goes on to say that the awakened person doesn't seek approval because they no longer need it to orient themselves. Avoiding being hated ceases to be a goal, as pleasing others is no longer a bargaining chip. A simple example helps to understand this. When someone stops justifying every decision, those around them begin to better assess what they ask for. The calculated use of force at this stage can simply be a quiet refusal. Loyal armies of their own don't form around those who seek applause, but around those who stand by their choices. Constant adaptability here means knowing that not every environment deserves your energy. He observes that awakening doesn't make someone hard, it makes them selective. And this selectivity communicates power more clearly than any fiery speech. He concludes by pointing out that the awakened removes emotional access. It's not coldness, it's psychic hygiene. People, situations, and patterns that previously had free access now encounter invisible limits. The end justifies the means when the means are internal protection. Better to be feared than loved emerges as a side effect. Those who lack access cannot control. The appearance of virtue ceases to be a priority because the person no longer needs to appear to be anything. Virtù and fortuna accompany those who become unattainable without becoming hostile. He suggests something practical. Observe who has the power to alter your mood in minutes and gradually reduce that access. Small changes generate large shifts in power. And when someone becomes like that, something curious happens. The desire to regain control becomes inevitable. He begins by stating something unsettling yet liberating. You were not born weak, you were made weak by a system that benefits from your dependence. Machiavelli understood that politics guided by reality, not by ideals, requires recognizing conditioning before overcoming it. The end justifies the means when the means is mental autonomy. Better to be feared than loved reappears here as internal sovereignty. Those who are not dependent do not bow down. The appearance of virtue loses relevance when a person takes responsibility for their own choices. Virtù and fortuna do not favor permanent victims. They favor those who take control of the game. He reminds us that the reconquest of power does not begin by confronting the world, but by dismantling the internal narratives that keep someone small. Decisions based on real human nature require admitting where there has been excessive concession. This recognition is not guilt, it is a starting point. Next, he talks about removing emotional dependence, as if disarming an invisible trap. Dependence is not affection, it's disguised neediness. Avoiding being hated at this stage ceases to be a compass, because pleasing others no longer defines direction. A practical example clarifies this. When someone decides not to respond immediately to every demand, the world doesn't collapse. It reorganizes itself. The calculated use of force here can be as simple as delaying responses, choosing silences, and denying false urgencies. One's own loyal armies are formed when a person trusts in their own ability to withstand initial discomfort. Constant adaptability is learning to say no now without over-explaining. Machiavelli knew that whoever controls the pace controls the game, and controlling the pace begins from within. Finally, he talks about building an unwavering, not rigid mind. Unwavering because it understands the game, flexible because it adapts to the terrain. The end justifies the means when the means is strategic clarity. Better to be feared than loved here means being respected for consistency. The appearance of virtue gives way to silent effectiveness. He suggests something concrete, creating routines that strengthen the mind, strategic reading, reflective writing, and periods of deliberate silence. Books dealing with strategy, human behavior, and power help sharpen this perspective. Decisions based on real human nature become the norm, not the exception. Virtù and fortuna align when a person ceases to be a reaction and becomes a cause. And when someone becomes their own weapon, the next step ceases to be theory and becomes a conscious choice. He concludes his journey with a statement that doesn't sound motivational, it sounds definitive. I am the consequence. Machiavelli would understand this as the pinnacle of politics guided by reality, not ideals. When someone assumes they are the consequence, they stop blaming, they stop waiting, they stop asking. The end justifies the means when the means are absolute responsibility. Better to be feared than loved here is not an external posture, it's an internal alignment. Whoever is the consequence doesn't threaten, they only act. The appearance of virtue no longer matters because coherence speaks for itself. Virtù and fortuna arise when a person realizes that every choice, including omission, shapes their position in the game. Decisions based on real human nature cease to be theory and become daily practice. There is no longer room for convenient innocence. He then speaks of resistance to mediocrity, not as inflammatory rhetoric, but as silent discipline. Mediocrity is not a lack of talent, but an excess of compromise. Avoiding being hated keeps many people small, predictable, and easily manageable. The calculated use of force, at this point, is choosing higher standards even when no one is watching. A simple example helps: waking up at the time agreed upon with oneself, fulfilling internal promises, not negotiating values for immediate comfort. Your own loyal armies begin when you trust yourself. Constant adaptability is not changing direction for convenience, but adjusting strategy without betraying the objective. Machiavelli knew that whoever does not govern themselves will always be governed by someone else. Finally, he reinforces that power lies not in dominating people, but in shaping one's own reality. Strength lies in stillness, not in shouting. The end justifies the means when the means are conscious presence. Better to be feared than loved translates here as inevitable respect. The appearance of virtue becomes irrelevant when a person becomes a silent reference point. He suggests something practical: choose an area of life and act with absolute precision for 30 days, without announcing, without justifying, without seeking validation. Just do it. Decisions based on real human nature require consistent action, not momentary inspiration. Virtù and fortuna find those who act in silence. And when someone understands this, the game changes, not outwardly but inwardly. If you've made it this far, you've already realized that none of this is about cheap motivation or catchy phrases. It's about facing, without anesthesia, the way you've been conducting your own life. How many decisions have you made to avoid discomfort? How many times have you traded silence for explanation, limits for guilt, strategy for reaction? Machiavelli taught that politics guided by reality, not by ideals, begins when someone accepts that the world doesn't reward intentions, it rewards attitude. The end justifies the means when the means are awareness. And now the inevitable question is, what are you going to do with all this? Observe your routine starting today. Where are you still seeking approval? Where are you still giving away emotional access without criteria? Better to be feared than loved doesn't mean hardening your heart, but rather ceasing to live on your emotional knees. Avoiding being hated can no longer be your compass. Virtue and fortune only walk with those who take the risk of standing by their choices. Are you willing to lose comfort to gain respect, to endure silence to achieve inner authority, to stop reacting in order to finally act? True power lies not in controlling people, but in becoming uncontrollable. When you build an unshakable mind, decisions based on true human nature become natural. Your own loyal armies begin within you. Strength lies in stillness, not in shouting. If this content has stirred something within you, don't ignore it. Change doesn't happen when you agree, it happens when you apply it. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and keep learning about strategy, power, and mental clarity. Because understanding the game changes everything, but playing consciously changes who you become.